Go fast.
Good evening, Hinton and Yellowhead County residents. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time here tonight to join us at this virtual town hall meeting. This is our third town hall meeting for the Hinton RCMP Detachment. We were fortunate to have one in person prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but our last two have been done virtually, including this one here. I am very proud to call Hinton home, and I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback and comments tonight. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Murphy. I'm the detachment commander here at the Hinton RCMP Detachment. I've been in Hinton for just over 3.5 years. I've been in the RCMP for just over 20 years. Tonight, I'm going to be joined with Sergeant Graham Gursky and Constable Vedran Popik. Sergeant Gursky is in charge of the operations of the detachment, and Constable Popik is a general duty constable, the boots on the ground, the one that's actually responding to your calls for service or the complaints that we receive. He's one of the local investigators. Hinton Detachment is comprised of 27 employees. 22 of those are RCMP members. I can tell you the RCMP members that we have in this community are very, very committed. They're a wonderful group that come for each and every shift to make a difference. We also have 5 dedicated support staff, administrative staff, and without them, we wouldn't be able to function the way we do. Hinton's also benefits from a wonderful victim services unit. That's a 3-person unit with many volunteers called advocates that provide assistance to the victims of this area. Hinton is also fortunate enough to have an Rcmp Chaplain that serves the detachment. The chaplain position is a volunteer position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Sergeant Gursky, just to do a quick introduction of himself, and then I'm going to give an overview for tonight and discuss how that's going to look for the next hour. So Sergeant Gursky, go ahead.
Good evening, Hinton and Yellowhead County. My name is Sergeant Graham Gursky. As Staff Sergeant Murphy said, in charge of detachment operations here for the Hinton Detachment. Coming up 16 years of service myself, been all over the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, Alberta. I got to Hinton in October 2019, and I've really had a great time here in the community. My family and I love being here. Lovely town and community. We have a great Hinton Detachment team, so I couldn't be happier. And I'll throw back to Staff Sergeant Murphy here.
Thank you. So I just want to give a bit of an overview for tonight, what tonight's going to look like. So most importantly, right off the get-go, I do not want us to do most of the talking. We are here tonight to listen to you, to listen to the residents of Hinton, to listen to the residents of Yellowhead County. We want to hear from you. We want to hear any questions, any concerns, any comments that you may have. This purpose, this community involvement and engagement is very important to us. It is very important that we're listening to our communities as to what their concerns are. This venue here, this town hall venue, and this meeting here tonight provides us an opportunity to hear firsthand about some of the concerns, so that when we select our policing priorities for this upcoming year, we have this information to work from. So again, I don't want us to do much of the talking. I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of questions, a lot of comments. I can tell you we've started the consultation process quite some time ago. We also received some emails ahead of this event. And so we'll be able to address each and every one of those comments that we received ahead of time here tonight as well. But I do encourage everybody to post your questions, to ask your questions, or if you have a concern, please feel free to join us. So and let us know. So it will assist us in selecting our priorities, which we will set here this month. And we run on a fiscal year that will start April 1st and end at the end of March. It is important for everyone here to know that we engage in this process throughout the year. So this isn't a one and only. We respond to numerous calls. We listen to victims. We listen to complainants. We participate in many committees and many groups. And we're continually receiving feedback from these individuals. And that helps us, again, make sure that we put the right resources in the right place at the right time. And I'll talk a little bit about that further on. We also recognize what may be a priority in January may not be the priority in May. So we need to be able to monitor and adapt accordingly throughout the year. So again, this is just going to be one venue for people to share any comments with us. But throughout the year, again, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns, comments. We'd love to hear them because it is very, very important. I will ask that nobody ask about a specific investigation in this public forum. If you do have an ongoing investigation where you have a question or a comment, please feel free to call the Hinton RCMP Detachment during the business hours, 780-865-2455. So the overview for tonight, I'm going to talk really quickly about trends, and I'm going to do a comparison of 2020 to 2019 and kind of what we've seen early here in 2021. I'll talk a little bit about the initiatives that we've had ongoing for the last year and some of the results of those initiatives. But most importantly here tonight again is to monitor any questions, any comments from anybody so we can discuss that as a group. And again, if I don't have or we don't have an answer for you here tonight, we will get that information and get back to the individual for sure. And also, and I'm very excited, we're going to have an opportunity to hear from Constable Popick, who later on in this presentation, this town hall, he's going to spend a few minutes just talking about his recruitment to the RCMP, what it was like for him at depot, and how his first posting of Hinton, Alberta is going so far. So that will be great. And then finally, Sergeant Gursky will be sharing some tips, crime prevention tips when it comes to property crime, and he'll share that with everyone tonight. So without further ado, let's talk about statistics a little bit. So we've been doing these town halls again, dating back now to 2019. 2019 was a very busy year for police here in Hinton. We saw numbers that were probably at an all-time high for the last previous 5 years. So going into 2020, we had several initiatives and objectives in place, mainly to reduce crime and specifically that of break and enters. We were seeing a high number of break and enters in this area, and we wanted to focus our efforts on that. We also wanted to focus our efforts on community involvement and engagement. So this town halls being one aspect of that, but throughout the year to make sure that we are listening to our community and that we're getting involved with the community. Very, very important to us. And then finally, traffic as well. It's not lost on us that we are in a very busy corridor with Highway 16 going through the town of Hinton, and traffic concerns of residents are always going to be a priority and were for that year. So I want to talk a little bit about, again, 2019 and 2020. So I'm going to do a comparison but just between the 2 years. So in 2020, as compared to 2019, we saw a 1% decrease in persons crimes. That would be your assaults and any crime that's committed against a person. We saw a 35% decrease in property crime, a 31% decrease in criminal code matters, a 61% decrease in break and enters, which resulted in 76 fewer break and enters as compared to 2019. We saw a 47% decrease in theft of motor vehicles, 34 fewer instances, and 46% decrease in theft under $5,000, which was 139 fewer instances. So overall, the numbers were down across the board, with an exception that I'll talk about here soon, being family violence related complaints. So again, our goal was to reduce break and enters by 7%, but it was actually reduced by 67% in 2020. We also wanted to increase our clearance rates to 26%. So those break and enters that were occurring, we wanted to make sure that proper investigations were being conducted and that we were solving 26% of those. And at the end of the year in 2020, we actually solved 35% of the break and enters. Finally, we wanted to decrease the amount of collisions that were happening in this area. So just to put it in a bit of perspective, in 2016, there was 358 collisions within the town of Hinton. 2017 was 326, 2018 with 286, 2019 281, and in 2020 187. So we've seen a downward trend now for several years, and I'm hoping that will continue. We also wanted to, again, make sure that we were continually engaged with the community. While COVID-19 and the pandemic have made it very difficult for that. However, we have adapted our practices and we've still managed to attend many groups, many committees. Of course, this being done virtually. We still have members assigned to the schools here in Hinton to continue that dialogue to make sure the open communication between the schools and the RCMP. And so it was important that we continued that. We just didn't stop that community consultation. I'll talk a little bit about the initiatives here in a second, but foot patrols and again, putting the right resources in the right place. We can only do that when we get the complaints, when people are calling in the complaints. So over this last year, there were several areas where we saw an increase in complaints, and these stats are actually monitored on a weekly basis. So every week we are identifying what we call a hotspot, and that is where we will be putting our resources at strategic times and strategic locations. So that was just one way that we wanted to make sure that we continue to get out into the community. Again, we wanted to get out of our police vehicles, foot patrols, bike patrols. Again, getting out there, not necessarily just in a vehicle driving by, but walking those streets, walking those back alleys, on the trails, on the bikes. And we wanted to hit all those areas. And so we had a number of those patrols throughout the year and received some fairly good feedback. And that is likely an area that we'll continue to improve upon moving forward. On the rural side of things, visibility is very important. We have a very large rural area that we cover here. And it's important that we're, again, in our rural area and trying to do so proactively, not just when something happens, when a complaint is received, when a crime occurs. We want to, again, get out there before that. I want the residents to be able to see us. I want them to be visible in those areas. And again, if we are having an issue in some of our rural areas, putting the right resources at the right place at the right time. So I do want to say in 2020, between April 1st and December 31st, Hinton RCMP members actually conducted 552 proactive rural patrols. So those are patrols, again, not us responding to a complaint. It's actually us getting out there and just being in certain areas and trying to be visible. We do likewise in the town of Hinton, of course. And again, that goes back to putting those resources. So if we get a number of complaints of, for instance, theft, putting resources in that location at that time, that visibility, trying to make it, and I'll talk a little bit about that, crimes of opportunity, making it that much more difficult for individuals to commit crimes in that area. So that, again, is one of the initiatives that we've taken on. So overall, again, when we start looking at numbers, the numbers for 2020 were fairly good. And one may start to ask, okay, well, why is that? I think there's a number of factors at play, and I do think COVID was part of that. I think people were at home a lot more. There were certain businesses that were closed. So again, it was more difficult for some of our criminal element to commit these crimes because people were at home, were more visible, and it made it that much more difficult. But I also think it is our initiatives had an impact in some of these areas as well, making sure we're doing those thorough investigations and making sure, again, that we are committing resources to the right place at the right time. That brings me to some of the initiatives here that I'll talk about very quickly. So in the last two town halls and any of our updates to the town of Hinton or Yellowhead County, we talked about the habitual offender management program. And again, this program works with habitual offenders or prolific offenders that are committing a lot of crimes. So again, a select few individuals that is causing a lot of work and unfortunately victimizing numerous people. So they're repeatedly committing these crimes. So it's a program that, again, works with these individuals to try to ascertain some of the underlying reasons as to why they are committing these crimes, very specific to them, and then making the referrals as needed. We can't do this by ourselves as the police. We require the assistance of our partner agencies, whether it's addictions, the Friendship Center, FCSS, HELP. There's so many, bridges, the women's shelter, again, making sure victim services, making sure that these referrals are made and these individuals hopefully can get the help that they need so that they stop offending. It's our job, however, if they don't stop offending, that we hold them accountable. And that's through our thorough investigations, the proper documentation, and working with the Crown prosecutors and the court to provide the best package possible to the court for their consideration with these individuals. We also need to be very aggressive of monitoring, again, individuals that are in our community that are on conditions, whether they have current charges before the court, whether they're on probation, parole, and again, making sure that we're doing our checks. And again, it's not to set them up for failure. We actually want them to succeed, but I do want them to know that there will be those checks made. We will be going and we will be working with them. And it is our hope that they, again, are abiding by the conditions and not committing crimes. However, if they choose to do so, that we become aware of it and we follow up accordingly. So that one aspect has been ongoing and for several years now, and will likely continue into the future. I want to talk a little bit about the hotspots, because I had mentioned that again. We monitor our statistics on a weekly basis, looking to see what's happening in our communities, what's happening in the rural area, and again, identifying certain trends. We have to be very flexible because what an issue is for week number one will be completely different for week number two, and it's important that we stay on top of that. We do that by the hotspots, and again, we rely on those complaints of theft, or if you're a victim of any type of crime, to report that to us. But also those calls of suspicious vehicles, suspicious people. I can tell you I'm really proud of this area, because that number, our complaints of suspicious vehicles and persons, continues to rise each and every year. So individuals, again, are calling us and we're able to get there. And you know, sometimes it may turn out to be nothing, but we would rather have that than not have it reported to us. Because if you're concerned, you know your neighborhood, you know your neighbors. If you're seeing something that you're not sure about, your gut's not sure about, give us a call, we can check it out and then go from there. So we, again, will continue to do so. We also use crime mapping that's available to anybody. There's a link through the Town of Hinton website where they're able to go on, and we update that weekly as well as to crimes that are occurring within the community, and people are able to see that on a map, a visual. Throughout this last year, we did a lot of traffic enforcement with our partner agencies when we could. So we've paired up with numerous agencies. We're going to talk a little bit about that because that is some of the feedback we received here. So I won't go into a whole lot of detail. But again, looking at our areas where we have high collisions, high risk driving behavior, whether it's speeding, impaired driving, distracted driving, failing to stop at stop signs, failing to stop at red lights. We're looking at those areas and trying, again, to determine whether it's an education component. Do we need to do media release or further education, or should there be some enforcement component to that as well? And usually it's a combination of both. Throughout this last year, again, we've also worked very hard with many community agencies, partner agencies. Again, we couldn't do this by ourselves. We rely heavily on working with those other agencies and utilizing their expertise. And I find we serve Hinton so much better when we're able to work with others and acknowledging, you know, their areas of expertise and not trying to do everything ourselves. So we are engaged, and when I say we, I mean all the members of the Hinton RCMP are engaged in a variety of different groups, committees, schools, and that we continue to work with them. Can we do better? Yes, and that's an area that we'll talk about again, this community involvement and engagement this upcoming year. Finally, I'll talk a little bit about just the utilization of intelligence, being proactive, not waiting for crimes to occur, but being proactive in our investigations. We do have a general investigation section here in Hinton that is comprised of 3 members. These individuals work the more complex investigations, but they also do proactive work for the community of Hinton. So prime example, in the last couple of months, there's been media releases that have gone out where stolen property has been recovered, drugs have been seized, weapons have been seized, and charges have been laid. And so that is a combination of our plainclothes unit working hand in hand with the detachment members and having those results. And again, we want to make Hinton a community where individuals don't come here to commit crime, that we make it that much harder for them, because many of the crimes that we see are crimes of opportunity, where these individuals are going to locations where they don't think they're going to be noticed, or if they are noticed, that it won't be reported to the police. It's very important that we make it that much more difficult. And it's the little things of locking doors, removing valuables from our vehicles, calling in those suspicious people. We're talking a little bit about citizens on patrol here in a bit, because that was some of the feedback we received as well. And talk about all these initiatives, how we can all work together as a community to, again, make it that much more difficult for individuals to commit crime. So we did receive quite a bit of feedback leading up to this town hall, which is great. And I want to thank everybody who took the time to provide that feedback. I think what I'll do right now, I don't see any questions coming in from the audience, which is perfectly fine, because I will kind of go through some of the feedback that we've received, and maybe it's the same or maybe it is different. And I do, again, encourage you, if I'm not hitting on an area that you have a concern of, let us know. If there's something that you want us to talk about or you want us to consider, please let us know. So we will talk here, some of the feedback we received. I've got probably about 15 different points that we're, between Sergeant Gursky and myself, we're going to address. What I think we're going to do is just start with a couple now, then take a break and have Constable Popick come in and do his little update about himself, and then we'll carry on with some of these concerns and questions that have been raised to us. So at this point, I'm just going to turn it over to Sergeant Gursky. We received some feedback from Yellowhead County specifically with a questionnaire that was done through the county, and there was a couple points, and the first being, again, residents wanting to see the RCMP patrolling the rural roads, visiting campgrounds, and four-wheeling through the trails. And I'm just going to turn that over to Sergeant Gursky to speak.
Good evening again. I'm just going to address specifically us, RCMP being making a point of being on patrol in rural areas. And I could tell you that actually at the start of this priority plan, which dates back to last April, Hinton Detachment did make it a priority specifically that we wanted our members out and visible in the communities in the rural areas specifically as much as possible. So we do have one specific initiative, and that was rural visibility, rural patrols. And as Staff Sergeant Murphy said, from April to December, we have 552 patrols, and that means not responding to calls, as he said, just out and about in our rural areas. And that's all rural areas of the compromised, the Hinton Detachment area. And the goal is to just be out and about and deterring crime and just positively interacting with our community and having that positive police presence. So that is a focus, and it is really stressed with our members to make sure that each week they are out and about in all of our rural areas here in Hinton. And that kind of leads me to the second point from Yellowhead County. Question was asked of a suggestion of more enforcement of such problems as unlawful ATV abuse on Crown land, and what can we do to enforce that, and some other similar problems such as environmental fences and streams, rivers, such as the Brule Sand Dunes area in Over Canyon. So I could tell you that for that, we have taken steps actually to address that this year already. We've built, and some of our members here in Hinton have built some very positive working relationships with our partner agencies of Alberta, and that included such groups as Conservation, Alberta Fish and Wildlife, Yellowhead County, Alberta Environmental Parks. We've had some really great positive working relationships. And what we've done with that is we identify problems. Say we know that May long weekend, for instance, we have a high increase of out of town visitors, off the grid camping, whatnot, throughout that Brule Sand Dune area, kind of, and then to the south, Great Flats, Catamount area. So what we do is, and what we plan on doing again this year, is really having a joint enforcement approach, taking proactive initiative in that. So we'll partner RCP members in teams with our partners at Alberta Conservation, Alberta Environmental Parks, Fish and Wildlife, peace officers. And what we do is as we will conduct these proactive patrols. So for instance, on Victoria Day long weekend, you'll see our integrated teams really out there. And again, this isn't responding to calls, it's just being out and ensuring that we don't have issues in these areas in our rural parts of unlawful ATVing on Crown land or environmental damage. I can tell you that this past year, this patrol actually caught a group that was that had not been camping lawfully, and they were going to essentially leave a mess and depart. And the great thing about that is our proactive team caught this group, and they had them clean it up and dealt with according to the law. And that's kind of a great example of how these initiatives and our joint partnership approach can really kind of stem the problem before it expands and evolves. So that absolutely is a priority of Hinton RCMP and will continue to be as we move on in 2021 as well. You could look forward to seeing that throughout the summer months. Planning, like I said, is already well underway. So I'm going to throw this back now to Staff Sergeant Murphy.
Thank you, Sergeant Gursky. So yeah, great questions. Thank you, all county residents, for bringing those to us, and it's definitely noted. So thank you. We do have an online question. So before I turn it over to Constable Popick, we do have a online question of why has the crime gone down in 2020 relative to 2019, especially for property crimes. So I can tell you that it was a province-wide trend, not just Hinton alone. Province-wide, many areas saw this reduction in crime. And I think a big part of it, again, was crimes of opportunity were limited. So we had more people at home, so the residents not left vacant. And there was just less opportunity to commit those crimes because people were at home, they're not gone, less vacations. But I also do think a part of it was, again, some of the strategies and the initiatives that we had put into place, again, to look at these hotspots, these areas, and putting the right resources at the right place at the right time. So I don't think there's one answer for 2020 and why we saw that reduction. I think it is a combination of things, and the pandemic likely having a play at that. And again, it's not lost on us that many of these property related crimes are committed by a very small group of people. Now, unfortunately, these groups won't just stay in one location or one town. Quite often, they will go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, or town to town, county to county. And one example of that, there was a few individuals that were responsible for committing numerous crimes, property-related crimes, in a variety of locations here in Alberta. And so our general investigation section team paired up with some other units within the province to work to investigate these and to connect the dots. And it resulted in these individuals being located, arrested, and facing numerous charges throughout the province, including several charges from Hinton here. So again, it's very important that we communicate with our neighboring detachments, communicate with our partner agencies, and that we work together to deal with the prolific or habitual offenders in these situations. And you know what? We do have another question that I'm just going to turn over to Sergeant Gursky, and I'll get Constable Popick in place to take over here in a second.
I have a question, and that is, does your hotspot mapping include rural? And the answer to that is yes, it does. Our crime, our hotspot mapping is actually very comprehensive in K Division, which is excellent. So what we do, and Staff Sergeant Murphy mentioned, this is a focus for us this year. It's about being having smart, intelligence-led police, being policing with a purpose, strategic. So when we send our members out every week, that we identify what are the problems, and generally throughout the year, patterns kind of form, and we know that a few areas are more problematic than others and have had more crime occur than others, and that does include the rural. So every week, as part of briefings, we let Hinton Detachment members know what are our hotspots up in the Hill District of Hinton, what are they in the Valley District, what are they in the rural district. So our Hinton Detachment members absolutely know what their priorities are when they set out that door. They hop into their cruise and they want to be smart, strategic, and intelligence-led on patrol. And I'm gonna turn this over to Constable Popick now.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come here and say hello. I'm excited that you guys get to see me. I've been a member of the Hinton RCMP for just a little bit over a year now. I've taken on over 600 calls since starting work here, and many of these calls were calls where I've been the lead investigator. I graduated from the RCMP Academy back in 2019, in December of that year, and I graduated with a class of 23. And I remember specifically, or when I recall back, I was the only member out of those 23 graduates that got sent to Western Alberta. And of course, they all wrote on board where each and every one of us was going. And I remember when everyone in class saw that I was headed to Hinton, everyone that day was kind of walking up to me and saying, you know, Popick, you're very fortunate to get Hinton. You're very fortunate to go there. And I have to admit, at the time, I didn't really, or I couldn't really grasp what that really meant until I actually moved here, and I got to see the town. I got to speak to a lot of the residents here. So I can tell everybody here watching, and those that might see this stream a little bit later, that I truly do feel very, very fortunate to be working for the town of Hinton. And I know that my wife and I and my kids, we hope to stay here for as long as we can.
Awesome. Thank you, Constable Popick. I'm going to slide in there now. And if there's any specific questions for Constable Popick, I'll put them back in the hot seat here, and we can definitely have them answer any specific question you might have. So we did receive another question with respect to K Division decided what tier level they will use for their auxiliary. So there has been some recent communication that was just received from K Division with respect to the auxiliary program. So for individuals that aren't familiar with this program, the auxiliary program is a volunteer program where individuals from communities volunteer with the RCMP. They go out on patrol with the RCMP and they assist as an extra set of eyes and ears. But more importantly, again, they have community knowledge, that ability to, quite often, a lot of these individuals have lived in a certain community for a very long period of time. And so they bring with them that strength of knowledge for the entire detachment. Now, over the years, of course, there was various issues that came into play, and it all came down to, again, the safety and risk of the auxiliaries and making sure that we weren't putting them in undue harm or undue risk. And so for the longest time, the auxiliary program was put on hold. But I can tell you there's been some recent developments with that. And my hope is here in the next few months, we'll have a clear idea of which direction it's going to head. And that will go, and I'll make sure that information is shared with the town of Hinton. And for any individuals that may be interested in the auxiliary program, we can start having those conversations to see. I should also note that there's part of the auxiliary program isn't necessarily just going on patrols with the members. There's a big push, again, for having volunteers within the community that know the community, assist us with community events, whether it was sitting at a table with us, again, as we provide presentation or information. And again, COVID's kind of put that on hold. But as we move forward into 2021 and 2022, it is my hope, again, that we can utilize the auxiliary program. I think it was a very valuable program to the communities, very valuable to the RCMP, and I worked with some very wonderful auxiliary constables over the years, and greatly appreciated all of the assistance that they provided for sure. So thank you. That was a great question. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit here with some of the other questions and comments that we've received here over time. And one is Citizens on Patrol, and I received that from a few different groups actually about Citizens on Patrol. So again, Citizens on Patrol is a community-based program where volunteers come out and they basically drive the streets of Hinton, and they act as eyes and ears only. So they report any suspicious behavior to the RCMP so we can follow up accordingly. So again, it's another set of eyes, ears out in the community, driving, again, strategically, hopefully, at the right place at the right time to be able to report stuff and information back to the Hinton RCMP, and then we can respond accordingly. So this is a program that isn't actually run by the RCMP. It's a community program. Now, in saying that, since arriving in Hinton 3.5 years ago, I have had some conversations with a few individuals that were interested in starting up the program. Unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. I know Hinton used to have a very valuable Citizens on Patrol, but like many programs, it relies solely on volunteers, and over time, they lost the volunteers and they were unable to continue to run the program. I will say that if anybody is interested in the town of Hinton to learn more about Citizens on Patrol, I encourage you to contact the Hinton Detachment, ask to speak to Sergeant Gursky or myself, and we'd be happy to have that discussion with you. It'll all begin by forming a board and then looking for volunteers. And again, it's very important that it is community driven because, as everybody knows, RCMP members transfer and come and go. This is a program that we want to establish within the community. And of course, we will work very closely hand in hand with any Citizens on Patrol group. And we would identify a liaison within our office to ensure open lines of communication. But if anyone is interested in that, again, I encourage you to get a hold of the Hinton RCMP detachment, and we can have that discussion and take the next steps. All right, so on social media, I was also monitoring Facebook, and thank you for everybody who is sharing this post of this this live event here tonight. But a lot of people just put comments maybe on on Facebook. So I managed to write down a few of them just so we could address them, because again, they're very important. And quite often, I'm not just hearing it from one person, I'm hearing it from several, either individuals or groups or businesses. Because again, it is important for us to also be consulting with the businesses in the community, because sometimes that is a little bit different than what individuals are facing. So some of the feedback we received, I'm just going to go through them quickly and we'll talk about a few of them. One is porch pirates. So I'm assuming that means theft of mail that's being dropped off at your door on your porch. And we know since the pandemic started, there has been a ton of deliveries. There's been a lot of different companies that are delivering packages. And yes, a lot of these packages are left on the doorstep. So when I received this, and this isn't the first time I heard this, but what I can say is when we're looking at our statistics, we're actually not receiving these complaints. So I ask that if you have a package stolen or you suspect that it's been stolen, please take the time to phone and report that to us so we can start looking at these trends and working with some of these companies and coming up with some initiatives and strategies with within the RCMP detachment to deal with theft from doorsteps. Part of that will also be education, and we could do education pieces and just share some tips with individuals to, again, make it that much harder for individuals that want to steal packages from the front door. Little things that we can do to make it that much more difficult. So that was one of the things that we received feedback on, is theft from the doorstep. Another big one is theft from vehicles or just theft in general. So again, back to that property crime. So that's not lost on us. We see again year after year, and 2020 was a good year and when looking at property crime, but that doesn't make it any easier for the individuals that were victim of property crime in that year. So again, we want to continue to work and get better in addressing this property related crime, and theft is one of those big ones. So whether it's shoplifting, theft from your motor vehicle, theft from yards, theft from backyards, there's a lot of things that we can do and work together as a community to make it that much more difficult. And what's really important, even if you think it's a waste, I just encourage everybody to please report it to us, because if it's not reported to us, it's very difficult for us, again, to put the proper resources in the right place at the right time. So if we know that we have an issue of thefts in a certain area, we'll be better able equipped to deal with it. And again, it will show us that we maybe need to do a little bit more work in that area. Maybe we need to come up with different strategies, different initiatives, or different education pieces. So all of that is very beneficial to us when you take the time to report it. So the next one on the list was drugs, people being concerned with drugs in the community. That is a concern of the Hinton RCMP as well. And with the recent search warrant that was just conducted in the seizure of some drugs, we recognize again that it is in the community. We also deal with a lot of people that are battling addictions. And so this is a twofold issue. One, it's very important that the Hinton RCMP does everything it can to hold accountable those individuals that are selling contraband or selling illegal drugs within our community. And then, oh, my apologies. That flew is shut off. So with in saying that, again, it's twofold. We got to hold those that are selling the contraband or selling the illegal drugs in our community accountable. And number two is working with our partner agencies to deal with addiction. So I talked about the prolific offenders, the habitual offenders. A lot of times, again, these individuals have underlying issues, and some of it is drugs. There are addictions. And again, it's making sure that we're working with our partner agencies that provide those supports, provide those services in helping those individuals as well. So drugs is an area that we'll continue to focus on, because I can tell you with drugs, we all often see property crime as well. So and sometimes that's the fuel drug addiction. So that is an area we will continue to focus on. I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Gursky to discuss speeding in school zones. And also the next one, speeding down on Switzer going towards, I guess, the crosswalk. They stated by the green square, but I believe it's as you're coming down the hill around that corner, that crosswalk, and it is a high risk area. So I'll let Sergeant Gursky discuss those 2 points.
So speeding in school zones and speeding in the crosswalks, near Green Square. And it actually, in general, this traffic safety and police visibility in our school zones and in high pedestrian areas, absolutely a priority for Hinton Detachment, and our members focus on this again as part of their weekly patrol priorities. Our members are expected to be in the school zones during high pedestrian hours. And what I mean by that is when students are going to school in the morning, so between say 8:10 to 8:40, and then when they're getting out at about 3 to 3:40, our members make it an absolute priority to be in all 5 of our school zones in the town of Hinton. And we focus on, again, traffic pedestrian safety in those zones, making sure students and staff and our citizens in general are safe in those areas. Traffic safety, again, and that priority of our members with the speeding and the crosswalk at Switzer. Again, we take into account, and I as operations NCO here will look at, I'll analyze where our traffic offenses and collisions and incidents with pedestrians are happening. And that's why I encourage anything, if you do have issues, please report it to us and let us know, because we can place priority resources in these areas and ensure that proactive traffic safety enforcement is done. And I could also say that we do communicate on a weekly basis with our town bylaw partners to ensure that we have a coordinated approach for that area as well.
Thank you, Sergeant Gursky. Then we did receive some feedback with respect to homelessness within the community as well. So again, this may not necessarily be a policing or criminal element to this, but homelessness, of course, is a community concern. And for us, being the RCMP and being on patrol and being out in our community, is very important, again, that we are working with our partner agencies. And we have a lot of wonderful agencies in this community that are very committed and just have the biggest hearts as they want to help citizens within this area. And whether it's FCSS with the town of Hinton, the Friendship Center, Help, Bridges, there's just, I can go on and on with the number of groups here that again exist, and they want to do their best to help. So for us, we're definitely part of that piece. So again, it's making sure that these individuals that we're encountering, again, that we're working with our partners, with these agencies to, again, hopefully provide them some supports and address some of the underlying issues and get them the help that they need. It's extremely important. We here in Hinton, we have mild weather or mild winters as compared to certain locations, but I can tell you homelessness is an issue, and it's not just a Hinton issue. It's an issue for many people. It's just important, again, that we recognize as the RCMP that we're one piece of the puzzle, and that we continue to work with our partners, and we will continue to do so this year. And whether that means some different initiatives or new initiatives, I can tell you that we'll have a seat at that table to provide our input and be part of the solution to assist with that for sure. The next one, then I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Gursky for a few tips on property crime. Then we'll come back again to some of these other questions, comments, or concerns. So community involvement, again, we've received feedback that it's very important to residents that the RCMP and the police are engaged with the community, and I couldn't agree more. We need to be, and it is our responsibility to be engaged with the community, be involved with the community. And that's going to be done in a number of ways. And the RCMP members of Hinton Detachment, again, make me very proud with the amount of time that they spend out in our community with different groups, agencies, as volunteers. So we have numerous RCMP members that are volunteer coaches in various sporting events or sporting teams. We've got numerous members that sit on various committees, on various groups. And again, sometimes they're doing this off duty, but they're able to bring back this information to the detachment, this feedback that we're getting. And it's very important, again, that that we are approachable, that people are comfortable in approaching the police, that the kids are comfortable in approaching us with any concerns, and being involved with the schools is so extremely important, and being involved with our youth. But that's one demographic. We also recognize that we need to be involved with the homeless. We need to be involved with the elderly. There's so many different groups out there, and I can tell you Hinton Detachment and the membership of Hinton Detachment, they are involved and they are engaged. We are always looking for ways to improve that. Again, the pandemic made it very difficult for us to be out at community events and functions. It made it very difficult for the community to have any events and or functions. But I can tell you when we are able to do so safely again, the Hinton RCMP will be there. So I'll turn it over now to Sergeant Gursky to discuss some property crime prevention tips.
This thing died. So I'm just going to begin just a couple tips on some relevant property crime prevention issues that have come up here in the last little bit, relevant to our citizens. One is for March. It's actually Fraud Prevention Month. I'm just going to list a couple tips to help you in case you ever have potential scams and whatnot. And so a couple of these tips for Fraud Prevention Month. If you receive calls from unfamiliar area codes or numbers, emails from people you don't know, unknown senders or address, it's best to just ignore that and don't engage with these senders. They're often from foreign places, a lot of these scams. Online or over the phone requests for immediate payments or money transfers, such as e-transfers, gift cards, etc. Be very wary if you get requests like that. If somebody also is requesting personal or financial information via text or email, that's a little suspicious and should set off some red flags. If you receive common things like such as the pre-recorded phone messages or voicemails from banks or people saying that you have an arrest warrant for Canada Revenue Agency, that's not how that operates. So just immediately end that phone call. Don't engage with these callers. And a couple other just general points. Be extra cautious if you're dealing with checks from unknown parties. And another topic today that's been really hot the last few months is cryptocurrencies. If you don't know how they work, it's best to avoid engaging and dealing with them. And as for the next one, I'm just going to address a couple crime prevention safety tips in regards to your vehicles. And these are such things as, it's a good idea, always lock your door. Never leave the vehicle running with the keys inside it. I know we've had some cold weeks here in Hinton this winter, but it's a good idea. You just have to avoid that because it's very tempting to vehicle thieves to hop in with a warm vehicle running with keys inside. If you can, park in a well-lit area. Use a vehicle tracking system. And then when you bring it home to your residence, if at all possible, lock your garage, remove your garage door opener from your vehicle, remove all valves, anything that when you're parking out on the street or in the public that's, if you're leaving things out, the valuables, cards, gift cards, cash, whatnot, even coins, it sometimes invites these petty thieves that want to break into your vehicle. Another thing, just a couple tips that we talked about tonight in regards to mail and then property in general, because this is as Staff Sergeant Murphy said, it's, online ordering is just huge since the pandemic began. It's increasing to grow. It's probably not going to reverse that trend. So some tips with that, if you can, check your mail every day. If you plan to be away, have a trusted neighbor or family member check your mail. If at all possible, plan to be home when your packages arrive, and if at all possible, without opt for a signature required delivery from some of these vendors. And the next point kind of deals with your property, and that's, if at all possible, consider installing surveillance security systems on your property. And you can even do a little basic things such as ensuring proper lighting of your property. Again, keep all doors, windows locked, secure. Don't publish. I know sometimes this can be tempting. You're going to a lovely place, warm vacation, whatnot. In normal times, don't publish your vacation intentions on social media, because we actually have had reports of Canada and the RCMP people that will scope out social media and they're looking to see if you're leaving, and then they will try and target your property. And then just some other tips too, just keep your property neat, such as large shrubs, hedges, keep them neat, trim, not overgrown on your property, because sometimes that, if it covers windows, doors, whatnot, can lead to criminals that want to believe you're vulnerable for that. And just to summarize all this up, it's important to report these. You may think your stolen package from your step or some minor property fence is minor and it doesn't need to be reported to police. Nothing is too minor for us. Believe me, we want to hear from you. Anything, please report it. We base our patrols on an analysis of our calls for service here in Hinton. It's like I said earlier about intelligence, strategic-led intelligence policing. So no calls too small. Please let us know. And you can do such thing now as online crime reporting as well. And it's not any less diminished than calling our line. Every call, an online report is taken seriously. So please, by all means, give us a call, whatever the call for service may be.
Thank you, Sergeant Gursky. We're sharing a computer. We've had some technical difficulties. But that's okay. We got about 10 minutes left. So if anybody's still out there listening and if you have any questions or comments, please get them into us and we'll do our best to address them before 8 o'clock. But we do have a few more to talk about here quickly. So some of the feedback we received was specific to traffic, and we talked a little bit about the speeding in school zones, some crosswalk concerns. There's also some concerns with collisions at certain intersections. Highway 16 in McCardle is one of those areas. And again, traffic and ensuring that we have safe roads and doing everything we can to reduce the number of collisions. And that's property-related collisions, injury collisions, and of course, collisions resulting in death. It'll be threefold. So one part of that will be, again, analyzing these areas and trying to ascertain whether it's an infrastructure issue, whether it's missing some signage, if there's some issues that we can do. The second is the education component of that, making sure that we're doing our best to educate motorists with safety practice and safe road driving behavior. And then finally, the enforcement piece of it as well. So it is important. And again, we need to, again, be that is one component of things should education not be working. So as we move forward, I can just let everybody know that is concerned with the collisions, that we are continually reviewing these collisions at certain locations. And then we are taking it a step further to try to ascertain what are the causes of these collisions and working with our partners again to address those. And whether that then turns into education or enforcement, we go from there. But in saying that as well, if we know that there's an issue at a certain location, from that example, speeding in a school zone or collisions at a certain intersection, again, it's putting the right resources there, maybe doing a speed trap in that area, maybe having that visibility of the police, working with our partner agencies such as the Hinton Peace Officers in the rural area, working with Yellowhead County Peace Officers. And again, just putting some resources in that place. But it's certainly noted, and it is something we'll take into consideration as we pick our priorities for this upcoming year. So the next one I have is education and working with the schools. Again, the pandemic made it difficult. So prior to the pandemic, Hinton RCMP members were assigned schools. So each school had a minimum of 2 RCMP members assigned to the school. And so what that did was just open up the lines of communication between any concerns that were happening at the school and with the point of contact within the RCMP detachment. Now, of course, if there was any urgent complaint or incident that occurred at the school, it was just reported to us and we would respond with the members on duty. But what this allowed is us to have that opportunity to maybe hear about some issues that were going on at a specific school. And again, it's working with that school in that proactive manner to hopefully maybe provide some education, provide that presentation to the group and hopefully eliminate the concern or the issue before it becomes criminal in nature. And it's very important that we continue to work with the schools. And again, I want individuals to see us not just when there's a serious incident or when we're responding to a complaint. It's very important to me that they also see us in that proactive fashion and they get to know us a little bit. Again, building the relationship with the community and making sure that people are comfortable in bringing their concerns to us. And that takes some time. So it is important to us. We have been working with the schools. The pandemic's made it a little bit difficult, but it is something that we'll continue to do to the best of our abilities for sure. Also brought to our attention was concerns within the community of mental health and addictions. So I did speak about addictions already here tonight. And again, it is noted and it is a discussion we'll be having as part of our team and with our partner agencies. Mental health is one area that we always continually and closely monitor. So we do sit with various committees and work with various groups with respect to mental health. And again, working with our partner agencies to ensure that the resources are there for individuals when they need it. So for us, that is an area that we actually closely monitor, because it is one of the areas I talked about how property crime specifically was down in 2020. There was two areas where the numbers went up a little bit, and that was family violence and mental health. And we're starting to see that trend has actually continued into 2021 as well. It was not surprising. We expected to see an increase as a result of some of the stressors of the pandemic, especially as time went on. The first 3 months of the pandemic, we actually saw all numbers across the board completely down. But as the months went by, we started to see an increase in the amount of complaints that we were receiving with respect to family violence, amount of complaints we were receiving with respect to mental health. And again, it's not an issue that we'll be able to resolve ourselves. It's working with the individuals, working with our partner groups. And again, making sure that we're doing our job, that we're doing proper, thorough investigations with the right resources, bringing in the special units when we need to bring in the special units to support our investigation. So mental health and addictions is definitely on our board. When we're talking prolific habitual offenders, we discuss it. But it is obviously not lost on us that it is a concern of the community. So as I go through this, we have such a wide variety of concerns and comments that have been brought, and I want to thank each and every one of you for voicing these. So what we do at this point in time, based on some of the feedback we got tonight, the feedback we got previously, is we go back now as a group and we look at these concerns that have been raised to us, and we come up with strategies, we come up with objectives, and we come up with initiatives to deal with these. And then we report back to the community, because I think it's very important that we don't just hear from you and then provide you no update. So I can tell you there will be another town hall, and hopefully it won't be virtually. Hopefully we'll be able to do it in person. It'll likely be October of this year, and information will come out a little bit later on with respect to that. But as we go through this year, I don't want people to think this is your one and only opportunity to raise a concern, because again, I know Sergeant Gursky said it, and I've said it a few times. Please, if you're a victim of anything, please report it to us. But if you have questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. Pick up the phone. We will do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible, and we would like to hear what those concerns are. And if we're doing our job properly, we're out in the community, we should be able to, again, hear a variety of concerns from different people, different groups, different businesses. And again, looking at our resources and doing the best we can with the resources we have to make an impact on these concerns that are being brought to our attention. So we will bring each and every one of these back and have these as part of our discussions. And as we select what our objectives and what our strategies are, initiatives, again, we'll provide that update to the residents of both town of Hinton and Yellowhead County, and make sure that we keep everyone apprised as the year goes on, because again, what is a concern today may not be the concern in a month from now. We need to continue to monitor that and adapt accordingly. So I don't see any other questions here. What time is it now? We got about 4 minutes left. I don't see any questions. I'm going to leave it here for about 30 seconds to just give anybody any opportunity to pose that last question. While we're waiting for that, I just want to take a second to thank the town of Hinton for assisting us in being able to do this virtual, giving us the platform to provide this. There's definitely a lot of work behind the scenes that gets done for us to be able to do that. And I want to thank the town of Hinton for their assistance and giving us this opportunity to speak to residents. I do look forward to the day where we're able to do this in person once again. But I think it was important, and I think there is some benefit of doing these virtually as well, because I recognize not everybody can get to a certain location, and some people may be more comfortable with this venue and posing their questions or comments or concerns. So again, so I want to thank the town. I want to thank Yellowhead County for sharing this town hall as well. And most importantly, I want to thank everybody who's taken the time to either listen to us tonight or has taken the time to send us the emails, provide us that feedback. It is greatly appreciated. We are listening. We are doing our best, and we'll continue to. And I recognize, again, we need to continue to listen and to evolve and come up with new strategies and initiatives. And I can tell you, with knowing the group of RCMP members and the support that we have in place here in Hinton, I feel very it's very promising moving forward. So again, thank you for taking the time to reach out to us. It's now 7:59 and we will conclude this virtual town hall. Thank you everybody for listening.
This one's coming back.